When I stepped into the principal's office for the first time in years, it was almost surreal. The smell of freshly polished floors, the faint sound of students chattering in the hallways, it all came rushing back to me. But this time, I wasn't a scared teenager being summoned for some unjust punishment. This time, I was here, as someone with authority. To fully understand why this moment mattered so much, let me take you back. I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone. My parents weren't wealthy, and I didn't wear the latest clothes or have the newest gadgets. I was just an average kid who loved to draw, dream, and keep to myself. But to Principal Harris, I was a target. He wasn't the kind of principal who supported or nurtured students. Instead, he seemed to enjoy belittling kids, especially ones like me. Whenever I walked into his office, whether for being late to class or for something as silly as doodling on my notebook, he'd give me that stern, condescending look that made me feel small. "You'll never amount to much if you keep this up," he'd say, shaking his head as though I'd already failed at life. But it wasn't just his words. It was the way he treated me differently from others. The star athletes and popular kids, they could get away with skipping class or causing trouble. Me, a kid who mostly kept quiet? I was labeled as lazy, disorganized, and hopeless. There was one time in particular that still stings. I had worked on a science project for weeks. It wasn't fancy, I couldn't afford the materials to make it flashy, but I had poured my heart into it. When the school held a showcase, I was excited to present it. But when Principal Harris walked by, he didn't even stop to look. Instead, he muttered, "Could have tried harder," and moved on. That was the day I decided something had to change. High school wasn't easy, but I managed to scrape by. I got a scholarship to a state university and majored in education. The irony wasn't lost on me. I wanted to help students in the very system that had made me feel invisible. I worked hard, juggling part-time jobs and late-night study sessions. There were times I doubted myself. Times when Harris's voice echoed in my head, "You'll never amount to much." But every time I felt like giving up, I remembered how it felt to be overlooked and underestimated. I promised myself that if I ever made it, I'd make sure no student ever felt the way I had. Years passed, and I climbed the ranks in education. I started as a teacher, then became an assistant principal. Eventually, I was offered a position as the superintendent of schools in the very district where I grew up. When I accepted the job, I didn't think much about Principal Harris. But on my first day, as I walked into the district office, his name was right there on the staff roster. Principal Harris was still at the same school, still in the same position he'd held all those years ago. I wondered if he even remembered me. The day I visited Harris's school was a mix of emotions. Part of me felt nervous. I wasn't a scared kid anymore, but old memories have a way of sneaking up on you. Another part of me felt a quiet satisfaction. I wasn't here for revenge, but I couldn't deny that it felt good to be walking in as his boss. When I arrived, Harris greeted me with his usual formal, almost robotic demeanor. His hair was grayer, his face lined with age, but his sharp, dismissive tone hadn't changed. "Superintendent," he said, extending a hand, "welcome to our school. We're honored to have you here." For a moment, I wondered if he recognized me, but his eyes didn't flicker with recognition. To him, I was just another administrator. I toured the school, meeting teachers and students. I made it a point to talk to the quieter kids, the ones sitting alone or doodling in their notebooks. I saw myself in them. I made sure to listen to their stories, encourage their dreams, and remind them that they mattered. After the tour, I met with Harris in his office, the same office where I had once sat, feeling small and unimportant. He started talking about test scores, funding challenges, and discipline policies. His tone was brisk, like he was trying to impress me. But then I interrupted. "Do you remember me, Mr. Harris?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. He blinked, caught off guard. "Should I?" "I was a student here," I said. "Years ago, you used to call me to this office a lot." He studied my face for a moment, and then something shifted. I could see the faint flicker of recognition, followed by discomfort. I see," he stammered. "Well, I hope I helped set you on the right path." I couldn't help but smile at the irony. "In a way, you did. You taught me exactly how not to treat students." Harris shifted in his chair, his confidence faltering. "I'm not sure what you mean." I leaned forward, my voice firm but calm. Mr. Harris, for years, you made me feel like I didn't matter. Like I was destined to fail. But I didn't. I worked hard, and now I'm here, not because of you, but in spite of you. For the first time, Harris looked truly unsettled. He opened his mouth to speak, but I continued. I'm not here to hold grudges, I said. I'm here to make sure no student feels the way I did. We need to create a school where every kid feels seen, supported, and encouraged. That's the standard I expect from you and your staff. Harris nodded slowly, his usual bravado replaced by something quieter, maybe regret, maybe shame. Over the next few months, I made it my mission to transform the district. I introduced mentorship programs, increased funding for arts and extracurriculars, and held workshops for teachers on recognizing and supporting struggling students. As for Harris, he stayed on as principal, but he was different. He was quieter, less dismissive. I like to think our conversation had made him reflect on his actions, but I didn't dwell on it. My focus was on the students. One day, as I was visiting the school again, a student approached me. She was a shy girl with big glasses and a notebook tucked under her arm. Superintendent, she said hesitantly, thank you for talking to us last time. It really helped me. I want to be a teacher someday, like you. Her words brought tears to my eyes. That's wonderful, I said, smiling. You can do it. I believe in you. And in that moment, I realized something important. My journey wasn't just about proving Harris wrong. It was about making sure kids like her knew they were capable of greatness. This story is a reminder that the people who doubt you don't define your worth. Your dreams, your determination, and your resilience are what matter. If you've ever felt overlooked, underestimated, or dismissed, know this. You are stronger than their doubts. You have the power to rise above and make a difference, not just for yourself, but for others too. What about you? Have you ever faced someone who doubted you, only to prove them wrong? Share your story in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know what kinds of stories inspire you most. Together, we can remind the world that kindness and perseverance always win.